Okay, so I thought I'd just make a video for you to walk you through setting up the Raspberry Pi. There's a lot of people with a lot of information on it, but it seems like, anyway, I just thought I'd make it specific for what we're doing. So, because a lot of people's guides have fragmented information or whatever, so I'm just going to plug everything in. So I have my so anyway, we'll plug in the keyboard. Don't plug in the power. Plug in the keyboard, and then we got the mouse, and then got this little Wi-Fi dongle. Let's plug in the little Wi-Fi dongle here. Maybe. And then we got our little micro SD. So if you got the thing that I think you got, then your micro SD has a program called Noobs, N-O-O-B-S, already loaded on it. So I just put Noobs on this one so I could try and see what you see. Anyway, the SD card slot's in the back, and we'll slide this in there. Make sure it's clicked in. Is that clicked in? Yeah. That's clicked in. And then our HDMI and power are right here. So we'll plug our HDMI cable in first. Have it hooked up to some screen that you can hook HDMI up to. Or I believe, yeah, that's going to be the best option. I was going to say this also has a video out, but it's going to be more of a pain than just finding something with HDMI. And then here's our power. So the power is just next to the HDMI. We'll get some slack. Plug our power in. As soon as we power up, we should see this. Resizing fat partition. Okay, so now we have some options for which we want Raspbian. So we'll check the first one. First one's called Raspbian, and then we'll click install. This will install selected operating system. All data on SD card will be overwritten. Yes. So now this is going to run. So mine's going pretty slow, but down here on the bottom we can select we want US English, keyboard, it's already set to US. Okay, everything installed successfully. Now it's turning black. And we see this, which is good. Okay, so everything just scrolled down the screen, and now we're left with this. Now we can just use our keyboard. The first option says expand file system. Just hit enter, and then hit enter again. And that's it. Okay, next, let's just hit down arrow and change user password. Hit enter. We will now be asked to enter new password. Hit enter. Now down here, we have a blinking line. Don't forget this password. So it doesn't have to be massively secure. This mostly won't be accessible to the outside world. Well, anyway, come up with something we're definitely not going to forget. So I'm just going to do PyPod, hit enter, enter it again. Now, no letters show up when you type, so you just type it and hit enter. Password changed successfully. Okay. Okay, now we're going to go down to, let's see, configure advanced settings, hit enter, SSH, click on SSH and then click enter on enable. It's going to blink and say okay. We go to advanced options again. Okay, never mind, that's fine. Okay, so now we're done here. You just push over right arrow until you get to finish, hit enter. Now it's going to go here. Now we have a little blinking cursor. So the first thing we will do is type start X with no spaces. Start X, enter. Okay, so now we're all booted up. The first thing we want to do is set up our Wi-Fi. So I'm just going here to menu, click menu, down to preferences, Wi-Fi configuration. Now my Wi-Fi dongle is plugged in, and then I'm going to click scan and click scan again. And here I can see our connection, so I'm going to click it once. Actually, I'm going to double click it. Double click the connection, and then in the field that says PSK, type the password. And if your Wi-Fi, oh, I'm typing on the wrong keyboard. I always do that. If you don't have a password, I think it will just connect. So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to close it. So you should be able to see somehow to click, connect. And then once it's connected, this screen right here, current status tab, should say connection complete, and it should give you an IP address. So let's look at that IP address. Ends in 105. Let's close this. Now what we want to do is come over to a computer that's already connected to our Wi-Fi, or you could probably do it on the Raspberry Pi as well. And then you want to go to the control panel for your router. So for Netgear, I think the default is 192.168.1.1, and then hit enter. If that's not it, then try 192.168.0.1 or .0.0. Anyway, so find the default IP address for your router. I'm going to hit enter. Default username and password is usually like admin is the username and admin is the password. If it's different, then you can just Google, default Netgear username and password, unless you've set one up. Anyway, so I'm going to log in. So now I've got this page for my router. So now I'm inside my router, And what I'm looking for is either something that says address reservation, or on mine it says DHCP reservation. Mine's on the front page under basic setup, but yours may be somewhere else. But just look for something address reservation DHCP. So I'm going to click reservation, pop up this window, and now I can see everything connected to my router. And I notice that this one says Raspberry Pi, and it has the IP address 105. So I'm going to click select and click add clients, and then it's going to reserve. Here I can see clients already reserved. So now what that does is it's going to keep your Raspberry Pi, give it the same IP address every time it connects, which is very important because we don't want to have a monitor and keyboard plugged in. We want to access it over the network, and it has to know its address. So very important that we find this in the router. So once that's reserved, you can close out of that. Now what we want to do is shut down. And we want to shut down. So it's going to do this. Okay, so now that this is off, we can unplug the power. I'm going to unplug HDMI cable, unplug computer and mouse, keyboard and mouse. So now all I have is my Raspberry Pi with the Wi-Fi dongle. And now I'm going to plug my power back in. And these little lights should light up. And we're going to give that a few seconds. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to connect to the Raspberry Pi through SSH. So now that's connected. I don't need it anymore. It's connected to the internet. So now I'm going to use my computer. And now on a Mac, an SSH client is already built in. So let's see. Here's a website I just googled. How do I use SSH on Mac OS X? So it says it has a built-in program called Terminal, which you can access through the Applications folder or under Applications and Utilities. So, and then it tells you how. So what we're going to do is connect. This is what my program looks like. So I'm going to type in the IP address. So I type in my IP address of my Raspberry Pi, and then I say open, and it's going to say potential security breach. I say yes, and now it's going to ask me login as default username is Pi, and then we changed our password, so I'll type in that new password that we made, hit enter. Now I'm logged in. On Mac, the way I think it says you do it is at the command prompt. So you're going to open a program called Terminal, then type SSH, and then you're going to type Pi, P-I, at, and then put the IP address. So Pi at 192.168, and then hit enter, and it should connect. And then it says you can save You can save the connection so you don't have to type it every time. Anyway, sorry I don't have a Mac, I'm not quite as much help. But basically now we have our Raspberry Pi and we have access to everything right here. We can run anything we wanted to on our Pi through this little window. So there's also, trying to think what else I need to show you, but basically that's it. If we can get to this point, we're doing pretty good, and then we can start playing with, you know, the pins. There's a way that we can actually get a graphical user interface. We can actually see what we were seeing before when we had it plugged into a monitor on this computer. We can install that if we need to. But for most things, this black window where we type, you know, just the command prompt is going to be plenty. So anyway, hopefully that made sense. Let me know if you got questions. Okay, the next thing we want to do is set up the root account. The root account is like the master user, so if we forget the password, we might as well start over. So what we're going to do is we're going to type sudo sudo -i, and now we're going to type passwd, like password, passwd root, and then we're going to enter our new root password. I'm going to retype it. Okay, now we're going to exit. Okay, so now we're logged in as just Pi now instead of root, and what we're going to do is we're going to update everything. So we just installed our operating system, so we want to make sure everything's up to date, so we do sudo apt -get update. Okay, now that the update's done, we're going to do upgrade. So we're going to type, if you push the up arrow, it'll put your last command in. So we're going to do sudo apt-get upgrade and hit enter. And we're going to push Y. It's going to ask us, do you want to continue? Put in Y, hit enter. Okay, I think that's it. So now what we have is just a ready to go Pi. It's set up with SSH and it's all updated and upgraded. So that's it for now.